Welcome to 3D Politics Live. Once again on Monday, I'm Tom, your incredibly pertinent host. And I've got all three Davids that matter, David Van, David D'Ambroso, and David Oldham. Got big news on the climate front. There's one empty chair at the G7 climate meeting, and of course we know who it was. Donald Trump didn't show up. Emmanuel Macron was there. Of course, Abdel al-Sisi was there, Panera was there, Merkel was there, all of them were there. But Trump made a pretty bold statement about the climate. He said, right after a meeting with the Prime Minister, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Trump said, quote, he wants clean air and water. Oh, that's basically a closed deal right there. I mean, basically he's on board.
And then you start hyperventilating. That means
I'm just saying, the man said he wants clean air and clean water. He's basically on board with the environmental things we need.
He's going to shut. I mean, don't we all want clean air and water?
Well, put all the hospitals. Ask the why.
Put all the hospitals out of business. What are they going to do?
That's big news, though. He wants clean air and clean water, so that's huge. But you know, the thing about this climate change is if we invest, and really, there's a big tragedy with the Amazon fires going on. We've got this horrible environmental tragedy going on with the fire, but this is another reason why it's foolish to invest all these trillions of dollars into a system that can be totally wrecked by one volcano plume, one major tragedy like a fire, or
a lightning strike,
and you can wreck all of that industry that we've been.
Well, and a lot of the Amazon comes from misuse and mismanagement of their natural resources.
Right.
I mean, they are clear cutting like crazy down there, to the point that they are actually changing the climate. And it has nothing to do with the carbon. It has everything to do that they want to clear cut for towns and agriculture, and it is literally making it less wet.
Okay, let's use, you're from California.
Sure.
Many of the problems of California, they have what they always call the fire season. It's just part of the deal. But it was made worse when the environmentalists said, well, these certain kind of rats need the environment of the underbrush, and they were prohibiting people from clear cutting the underbrush.
Among other things,
near their homes.
One thing you learn about ecology and the environment is that it needs your tender care.
Yeah.
If you're not attentive to the environment, it's just going to wreck itself.
Because nature and nature's God are not sufficient.
Not without your intervention.
We are so powerful. I had no idea the immense power we have. But take Yellowstone. I was out there about 25 years ago with my family.
That's a good story.
Just a few years after massive fires. And they said the problem is we weren't renewing the forest. We were just allowing this virgin growth to go unchecked to the point where it was an inevitability. It was going to happen. And once that happened, then all of a sudden you had all this new life. And I got to be there during the 6-7-year-old spruces and pines and the ponderosas and stuff. But then you say, well, what did it do for the habitat for the moose? Well, you know what it did? It increased the deer population because the deer had been run out because the mature trees aren't something they can chew on.
Right.
It's kind of like the pipeline, right, in Alaska. They promised that it would destroy the environment there, and it turns out that the caribou just thrived because they warmed themselves on the pipeline.
Yeah, you see somebody dumping warm water into a pond in the middle of winter up in Minnesota, and a bunch of geese say, heck, we don't need to fly to Mexico. Let's stay right here.
Right.
So,
well, there's a really good video you can YouTube it. It's about the beginning of the U.S. Forest Service and how the really, really big fires started right after they started the Forest Service, and we're trying to convince everybody that it was necessary for the Forest Service, and how backwards it all came about when exactly what was warned about from their behavior would happened, and they were able to capitalize on it when you think they should have been done under, done under. instead they used it to grow it to its immense size and garner more power, and then start with their
justify its
policies.
Where was illicit drug use at before the DEA versus after the DEA? I'm curious. I don't know. Can someone Google that?
But with
for
the
me?
forestry, I'll tell you.
These guys are making all my constitutional points for me.
Okay, the National Park Service turned, 100 years old, I think this month.
Thank God. Thank you, Teddy.
Okay. Nothing.
Mr. Constitutionalist himself.
Now, Ronald Reagan said the closest thing this side of heaven that we'll ever see to eternal life is a government program. And one of the things they learn when you're a bureaucrat is if you're hired to fix a problem, don't fix it or they'll fire you.
That's true.
Right.
You'll lose your job.
I think it's reminiscent of the EPA. Isn't it the biggest environmental disaster in history when the EPA dumped like millions and millions and millions of gallons of chemicals?
Good old Colorado.
Absolutely.
When they turned it loose, into the river.
Without the EPA, who dumped the chemicals
But
in the water?
David, they meant well.
Yeah, well, that's the important thing. What could have happened? How much worse could the disaster have been if someone made money off of it instead of having to spend your own money to create the disaster?
Well,
Think
hey,
about that.
we just had an environmental disaster on a much smaller scale right here in Tulsa, just over the spring when we had flooding.
Oh yeah.
Which would have been resolved before it ever got started if they had started releasing water early. But they didn't. Why? We find out now it was policy and they weren't allowed because of bureaucratic
I thought
mess.
they had to deal with the dam, the power authority. They had to generate so much power.
It's the whole thing, and it has to do with the federal government and laws regulating the court.
Whatever,
But my point is, it's the bureaucracy and it's people meddling where they shouldn't be.
I gotta fess up. Okay, I'm gonna eat crow this because I remember you and I had this discussion about it, and I was talking. Army Corps of Engineers says, well, if we dump too soon, and then that big massive front that we think is coming upstream comes downstream, then we add it to the problem. Okay, that makes sense by itself, but they were using that analogy to defend something completely different. And I think you and I were both with Congressman Hearn when he said they finally addressed that. And there will be seasonal preemptive drops now to bring about a situation so we know the rainy season's coming. We're going to allow for a little bit more containment capacity, right?
So how much of the Oklahoma rainforest are we going to lose as a result?
So I'm saying, David, you were right. Oh, Baldwin was right. Okay.
That's the easy thing about being named David. You can only say David was right.
All right. Get some duct tape, bro, so his head's going to explode here. It's getting big. Okay. What else?
The G7, to finish this off, the G7 countries have pledged $20 million to help fight the fires, which is a good thing.
$20 million.
It is an interesting thing. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, he's very confident in American society to deliver in relation to climate action. And what matters here, he says, is to have a strong engagement from the American society, the American business community, and the American local authorities. But he's leaving out the federal government.
It's funny that he wants to blame us for their mismanagement of land.
Yeah.
And that is our help.
Yeah,
that is amazing to me.
We're the filthy rich. That's all you need to know.
Well,
we're the filthy
That's
rich.
what
Say it, then.
Don't
Yeah.
lie.
Yeah.
We need to continue to subsidize Europe's military. Because we're that rich.
Also, I just want to touch on this real quickly. They keep restating this concept that the speed of climate change, that the climate change is speeding up.
It's happening up to 4 times a year now.
Speed. To calculate speed, you have to have a absolute frame of reference. We don't have an absolute frame of reference for the entire life cycle of the Earth. So we cannot calculate the speed of climate change.
Oh yes, we can. It's their mouth.
Convenient,
As fast as they can flap it, it is moving.
All right, let's move on to the medical marijuana thing.
Yeah, I tell you,
It's been 1 year.
I just got in touch with the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority today and asked for some numbers. I said, hey, it's 1 year.
You need
Let's get
some numbers or
Yeah.
some?
What's been going on?
They
Now,
got plenty to give.
Just saying.
last August, the commissioner now of the Department of Health Tom Bates. At that point, he was director. And he said, in the first year, we'll probably have total of maybe 80,000 licenses. A couple thousand of them will be businesses, and then the rest are going to be patients, 78,000. Well, we not only met that, but we met 240% of that number. In other words, we are just shy of 200,000 licenses filed for as of today.
That's a lot of people with glaucoma and knee pain.
Just 3 hours ago. In fact, they got it to me, they put it up publicly. It wasn't just to me. But I noticed they left one out, so I tweeted them back. I said, hey, come on, give me all the numbers. So they upped it another 1,000 for caregivers. They left that up. But anyway, so that's one of the numbers. The other thing, one of my bloggers, Nigel O'Malley, has been talking about in fees and in taxes on medicine sales. In about 6 months, the state and the local governments have collected about $50 million off of the patients. Now, keep in mind, no other prescribed medicine in Oklahoma do you pay taxes on except medical marijuana.
But these patients are happy to pay it.
Well,
they voted for
they're
it.
happy once they have their medicine.
Well, it's the most dangerous drug. It is a Schedule I drug. We shan't forget that.
Ah, sure.
And I need to know
That whole gateway thing.
How high are the tire fires in our average neighborhood as a result of medical marijuana passage?
I know, that's the other thing. We haven't seen, there was a news report, what was it, Channel 6 was doing about Luther, Oklahoma. Now, they were a city that the city council made an ordinance that says there's not going to be any dispensaries in this town. And then they got slapped around by some lawyers for it. But they decided to do a check, and they brought the camera crews along. We are going to catch people with medical marijuana. Not a single ticket written during that whole event for marijuana toxicity.
Okay.
So anyway, we've got a number of things happening here. We got that. We've got the average patient right now is spending about $220 a month on their medicine at taxable rates. We've got dispensaries, 1,800 licenses.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot, but you know what? It's just continuing to grow, and I've seen a few of them close. Yeah, there are some that just really weren't ready for operating their own business. It's just like anything else. I mean, how many waterbed stores you still see around, It's a fact.
Mine's still open.
Yes. Yeah. But, so we've got a lot of things going on. There's supposed to be a bunch of rules go into effect here in 3 days that some are going to protect the patients, but other things are going to be protections for businesses that say, hey, our employees have to drive heavy equipment, and they wanted a carve out for that. So that was some public safety things not going over really well. Just a whole bunch of things. Like, for instance, if I've got a processed, refined medicine through a processor, and we go for lab testing, and they come back and say, ooh, your numbers are a little beyond what they're supposed to be on a particular element, they're not letting you take that back and further refine it to get it. They say, no, you have to throw it away and take the loss. So there's just a bunch of stuff. Now, these are just, from...
Well, what else would they do, David? Well,
yeah.
I saw that on Bar Rescue. If you don't mix the drink right, they just pour it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Nobody can, have it and taste it.
So-
It's just common sense.
Yeah, we've just got a number
You
of
give me
things
too much
going on.
Coke in my Long Island iced tea.
This last weekend, there was a festival where they're having, it was High Times, a national magazine,
Right.
said, hey, we're going to have a cultivators contest for the whole state of Oklahoma. All you growers, bring your best stuff, and we're going to test it. And then they said, hey, let's get the public here, let the vendors come in, let's have a music festival.
First, second, and third class.
Yeah, and anyway, they were planning for about 5,000 people. Best guesses I got as of this morning was about 20,000 people in Oklahoma City this weekend.
High times indeed.
Hot as can be. It was just horribly mismanaged. But again,
And all I can think of is a hot dog eating contest.
Yeah.
But with pot.
yeah. And but the good news is there were no fist fights. Everybody got along. They're deadheads, right? They're just as long as you're sharing your weed. We're
How
getting
many
along.
died at the event?
I'm telling you, Tom, next prison riot, I got a guaranteed one-time only fix to get rid of it.
Yeah, instead of pepper spray, we just spray them with pot.
No, you just send in a bunch of reefers. 2 hours later, they'll be demanding Cheetos. You've won. You
We
put
should
down
just
right.
start doing that right
The
now.
problem-
Wait for
yes.
a riot.
The
Yes.
problem is, Tom, they will have another riot just to get more reefers.
That is the problem.
Oh, my
But anyway,
gosh.
so what I'm saying is, it's been 1 year. This is uncharted territory, and the thing we're looking for now is those people who are still serving up to 5 years in prison for simple possession. Many of them still haven't gotten out of jail.
Well,
Okay?
let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Because, I've been saying for a while now that we have more political prisoners
Yeah.
in the United States than I believe any other country in the world. And by political prisoners, I mean that you are not arrested and convicted of a crime where you harm another person, but it is a political edict that you have not submitted to.
Yes.
And it is merely for exercise of right. Whether it be a licensing violation, whether it be pot or gun possession, sales,
Personal
carrying,
consumption.
personal consumption,
Yeah.
purchase, sale, possession. Again, no harm. But we have for those of you who back the blue, and I want to back the blue.
Yeah.
With all my heart, I want to back the blue. But as long as they are arresting people for political crimes, and our prosecutors are prosecuting these people for political crimes, and our judges are tainting the jury by not allowing juries to have constitutionally minded people sit on the jury.
You talking about nullification?
Yes, because they actually manipulate juries and they ask questions
What
that
happens if you bring
preclude
up-
a constitutionalist like me from sitting on a jury because
Yeah.
for me, I would have to perjure myself in order to get sat because of the illegal questions that are asked.
Right.
I've been there and I've been through
Yeah.
the process. So I didn't know what I didn't know what I know now, and I didn't know what was going on at the time, but it smelled.
Yeah.
You missed out on a great time and 8 smackaroos per hour.
Hey, wow. Free parking.
But anyway, the whole point is that when we are talking about these types of crimes and people being arrested for them, we are talking about political prisoners. And quite frankly, the governor, well, and I don't know how much the governor can do, but the parole board or the prison board has a duty to release these people. The President of the United States is doing a little bit and hasn't done nearly as much as he should.
He's working with
From
Kim
the-
K right now.
From the
gotta be slow
on the
drug.
federal level, but the whole point is all these various people have their part to play and must do their duty and
So
release these people.
tell me this, Oldham. How does someone get out of jury duty? Give us like a real quick guide.
By the way,
what do you have to
before
say?
you do
Oh.
that, Adrian Otap says, nice shirt. He's going to have to put his on just to show you up, all right? Good seeing you, Neil and Jonathan. Glad to have you guys with us tonight. Okay, your question, D'Ambroso?
So how do you get out of jury duty?
Yeah, what do you say? Oldham style.
Be crazy. No, you're either be crazy or be really straight-laced, and you will be let go without question. Or be like me, now a constitutionalist, and tell the truth when you ask
Bring
the
up
question.
jury nullification.
When it comes up about jury nullification.
What is jury nullification?
Now, jury nullification is where you, as a juror, can, although the person would be technically guilty of committing the offense, and I'll put offense in quotes, that is dictated by statute, that you then release the person and claim not guilty because the law itself is unconstitutional.
Wouldn't that make you really bad at following jury instructions?
Well, that's the point, is the jury instructions themselves are illegal, and we need to start collecting the data on these jurists, these judges, who make not only the jury instructions, but it's actually beforehand in the seating of the jury, the instructions and the questions that the judge allows and commands in his courtroom. That's where the juries are tainted, and how you can get a jury convict somebody of an illegal crime. Because if nobody sat on the jury, that's a constitutionalist that would get
Help
it.
me out. Maybe you've seen this. I think it was James Madison who wrote much of our Constitution. I believe it's him who said the most powerful part of our court system is the juror.
Yes, by far.
Has more power than anyone.
Well, and this comes down to what
That's why you aren't allowed to hear about jury nullification, because then it would take power away from unelected officials and judges that legislate from the bench, and it would put it back into your hands.
Yes.
So you're not allowed to know about that because they have a power cabal.
Well, and you want to see that people are not allowed to talk about jury nullification. Just Google or YouTube jury nullification.
I think you can be removed if you hold out a sign that says Google jury nullification in front of it.
Oh,
Yeah.
my goodness!
But the point is that people who are passing out little pamphlets to potential jurors on the way into jury duty are harassed and threatened with arrest and everything else by local police when it happens.
Insurrection.
Out in the public square outside
Yeah.
the courthouse, as these people are going in, the cops come along and harass the guy, and it happens time and again and across the country. It doesn't matter where you're at. But the thing is that all politics, all civic duties and responsibilities are local, and there's nothing more local than we ourselves, and we individually have these.
Let me
duties.
ask: have any of you guys served on jury? Okay,
I was
now when I believe what they do is they get a pool for the week, right?
Correct.
And you got to sit there for a week down probably in the basement or something until you get called up to be interviewed, right?
Depends on where you're at. Some places
And
do
so
it for the
you
day.
can bring your own reading material, right? Like maybe, jury nullification, about 80 copies of it, and leave them scattered around the cafeteria.
Yeah and no, but
Doesn't exactly work that way.
I'm
Here's-
just saying,
well-
if you don't want to have to spend the whole week in the courthouse basement, bring a bunch of
Well,
them.
you can
Prosecutor's
definitely-
not
you-
doing their job if you don't get kicked out immediately.
You can
and the whole pool will be purged.
Yes,
So,
the problem is that sometimes the defense attorney is in on it, because to be released without using a challenge,
Yeah.
a peremptory challenge, what they have to do is everybody has to agree. The prosecution, the defense, and the judge have to agree to dismiss for cause.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the thing is that if you dismiss for cause, it means it's a legitimate cause. You are not ate all drugs
Or
and
your
all drug
or
use.
your business partner.
Okay. Whatever. Yes.
Gotta say.
Well, the point is that when they dismiss for these causes, jury nullification would be one. And was when I came up, the question was, it wasn't would you let him off if you think that the law is wrong. That's not quite the way they put it. What they said was, will you convict on this law irrespective of your feelings toward the law? So, or something to that effect. It was very clear. It eliminated anybody
That's a possibility, yeah.
as a possibility
Okay.
who could nullify it based on constitutional
Now,
grounds.
that's a little bit different than saying that applying that charge to this person's actions would be a misuse of that law.
That is completely different.
Right, that's to say the law has a proper application, but this isn't it.
Correct. In my particular case, they wanted you to assume that the law is valid irrespective of its constitutionality.
That's where we must start in our
Oh,
assumptions of every law.
Yeah.
right. That it is automatically constitutional, because otherwise,
How
it
else would it be a
pass it.
law?
Didn't one of the founders say that not only do you have a right not to obey it, you have a duty?
Well, that's in the Declaration of Independence.
That was Jefferson then.
Well, Jefferson and the committee.
yeah, right. I mean, they all signed it.
But
So, yeah.
well, no, I mean the small committee who wrote it. Jefferson didn't write it alone.
No,
he
but-
was the main writer, and then they came together and.
But Hancock and all the rest of them signed it.
Oh, absolutely!
Yeah.
It was unanimous.
Yeah.
So the whole point is, it is not only our right, but it is our duty to overthrow tyranny.
Yes.
And this is one thing, and it's one more thing that we each have the duty to do. And it's very simple. If we all live this duty, it changes in a heartbeat.
You know what makes it easier to do that? When your life isn't dependent on government. And so to me, it seems like a tyrant would want to make you as dependent as possible. What happened in Romania when they became a communist country, one of the best ways to convert the people was these little peasants living in shacks. The Communist Party would say, you know what, this thing's just run down. We've just got a really nice apartment up here for you, and we're just going to, and we really need to widen the road, so we need to take your shack out of here. And now all of a sudden, this peasant who wasn't dependent on government for anything, now all of a sudden is. And that's very true to this day.
Yep.
You know, that now all of a sudden where you can't get health care unless you get your government subsidy or, you know, something like that, they're making us more and more dependent.
You can't have a job unless you get a license.
Well,
25% of the jobs.
Stop and think about it. Property tax.
Yeah.
It's a way to make you pay for that which is yours.
Yes.
And you don't actually own that land. You're leasing it from the government.
Well, our law
So
says different.
long as you pay
law
your
says
property
different.
Now,
taxes.
property tax actually happened to be one of the major taxation forms around the signing of our new Constitution.
Well, it's not a problem if it's used just to protect your rights.
Yeah.
But when taxation gets confiscatory for other purposes, now we get into running people out of their ability to pay.
Well, when your property tax goes to pay for education instead of protecting property.
Or any other form of charity.
Right.
Because public education, let's understand, is charity. Somebody is paying for the service.
You know, charity is a funny way of
And
saying
that
an
is a
absolute
form of
human right
Yeah.
shall not be infringed. So
Hey, if you're just tuning in, I'm Tom. I'm here with all three Davids. David Oldham, David Van, David D'Ambroso, the three most important Davids in Oklahoma, speaking about all things
I'm
political.
glad you're saying that.
That's my job, gentlemen. Yeah, I wanted to actually, before we move off, we got way into the weeds with all that, but I wanted to ask about the excise tax. In this article from Sooner Politics, it talks about the OTC decided that since the state tax code didn't specifically exempt this medicine from sales taxes, that it must be enforced as well.
Yeah.
Must be.
So explain how it is that they're making a medicine an excise taxable.
So, yeah, here's what happens is, you know, simple people, average human, Chip Paul, friend of mine from up in Owasso, wrote 788, and he said, you know, all of this medical marijuana shall be taxed at 7% of the gross sale to the patient, to the licensed patient. And he didn't say the magic bureaucratic word. You have to say what kind of tax.
Kind of tax.
What kind of tax? So, well, he didn't say whether it was sales tax or excise tax, so they divined with their Ouija boards or whatever that, he meant excise tax. And since we now know it's taxable, and unlike most everything else that has excise tax, the legislature specifically exempts it from sales tax. Like, for instance, automobiles. Used to be that when you bought a car, you could get a loan on that car, but then when you went to register it, they were charging you sales tax, and that could be a whopping chunk of money. Yeah. And people, you know, they hurt the dealers because they say, you know, people just can't come up with all this tax money in order to buy a car. So they got the legislature to flip it, instead of sales tax, have an excise tax. Here's the difference. Excise tax is included in the list price, like when you buy gasoline at the pump. It's got the tax included. That's an excise tax.
Right.
Gasoline, you're not charged a sales tax.
are you saying that we're taxed more than once when we buy a vehicle?
We are now. Just recently, they decided to do a little of both. Okay, so let's get back to this. So they say now you got to pay 7% excise tax plus all the state and local sales tax, which could be anywhere from 8.5%, 9.5%, 10%. Some cities,
so you're looking at
some have been
17 to
11%.
20%.
What's wrong with that? It's like paying yourself because we are government.
Anyway,
wrong with
so this
Pay
is
yourself
Best argument
this is the
against
problem.
self-government I've ever
Chip
heard.
thinks you should.
No, if you're, you know,
He's
this,
so magnanimous with your money.
if you thought you voted for 7%, but you voters who voted for 70, you meant 17%. You just didn't know it. If you don't believe it, just ask the tax commission. They'll tell you. That's why it turned out.
It's like
that
a
way.
mandatory investment program,
And,
like Social
guys,
Security.
I can't
Great.
stop without saying this. Not a single legislator wrote a bill to repeal that. Not a one of you. Okay, I got it out of my system.
That would be nice to see that change. This.
It's an election year, hint, hint.
So what else about medical marijuana? Anything else? It's been 1 year. We're
No.
finding out that not only can they not calculate for calamity, they can't calculate for boom either.
Yeah, and look, I'm getting letters, I'm getting notes from people all the time. A guy who just said, man, I'm no longer walking with a cane. So I'm like, man, I got to go back to school. My PTSD's not nearly the problem it was, and I'm not having to take tranquilizers for it. You know, grandma with her arthritis, she's off of her opioids.
People can
Oh
sleep.
my goodness, the people that have, and listen, getting off opioids when you're addicted,
Jeez.
that takes several weeks.
That's huge.
To get through. That's a big, big deal.
A lot of our
you don't
veterans.
go off opioids cold turkey. That can kill you, you know? So there's just so many things happening. I talked to another guy who's, you know, on chemotherapy treatment and taking it just so he can keep his food down, so he can keep his energy, keep his weight.
Right.
You know, so there's just so many good stories. The thing is, right now, if we had that vote over again, it was 57%, it'd be pretty much 70%. I believe now that people are starting to hear from friends and neighbors, and they're not hearing the horror stories.
They're not getting the
that
fear-mongering.
that the Chamber of Commerce, keep in mind, $1.3 million was raised to defeat it. Okay?
By who?
Yeah, it was, Arvest Bank was one of the biggest ones. Chamber, let's see, some hospitals. I don't have all of them, but, you
Well,
know.
who would know better, David?
Okay, and listen, the people I talked to who were part of it, they said pretty much they scratched together about $30,000 for the pro 7088 side. Imagine $30,000 up against 1.3 million, and they still 57%.
Even if you have the will of the people
yes.
behind you, and I mean anyone
Yeah.
that knows anyone with terminal cancer has had it. I mean they know
Yeah.
that a lot of these drugs end up suppressing your appetite. When what do you need?
Yeah.
You need an appetite enhancer like
Yes.
cannabis.
Yes.
Whenever you have terminal cancer, if you're going to have any fighting chance.
Yeah.
And it was illegal
Oh,
until
yeah.
very recently for
Yeah.
terminal cancer patients. Think of the insanity of that. Giving them essentially synthesized heroin in its place.
Well, and the babies who are seizing, 200 plus seizures a day, and they couldn't have cannabis or CBD or any of that. Thank you, Mary Fallon.
Well, and
once again.
taking the choice, the freedom of choice away from the patient, the parents, the citizen. And they're creating the entire.
Well, do you want your
bubble
doctor
theory.
to decide or a bank, right? Do you want
Yeah.
the Chamber of Commerce to decide what's best for your health or your doctor?
Yeah. But, generally, I've said this earlier, this has been a good year for our legislature defending and advancing liberty. In fact, hey, Dean Davis, good to see you tonight. Dean was our top freshman in the House this year on defending liberties. I think he got like 9 out of 10 correct, But we've got, I do hope to see some more reforms in our next legislature. Yeah, I know it's election year. You're going to have, a lot of posturing going on. I just think after seeing that festival, they planned for 5,000 this Saturday, Sunday, and 20,000 showed up. They didn't know what to do with them. I mean, it's crazy. But anyway, that's my report on medical marijuana. Turned 1 year old today.
That's excellent. And you can see when, like you said, when the will of the people is behind it, you don't have to serve them up, mandatory truancy laws to make them obey. They show up because they want to, unlike healthcare.
Liberty is enjoyable. It's not a bad thing.
Let's talk about the gun referendum. The signing.
You mean the moms demand tyranny?
Yeah, the
Group?
moms
Yeah,
demand
why don't you
tyranny
tell
and
what you know about
and tell them about the lawsuit that was filed today.
Well, I would love to get in on it. Dawn, if you're watching, Constitutional Grounds is right there with you.
Don Spencer.
Dawn Spencer at OK2A, if you're watching, you can add Constitutional Grounds to your list of groups. But he filed with Kevin McAlvey. Kevin McAlvey is Kevin McAlvey.
He might be Irish. Who knows?
I'm trying to make you Irish.
Kevin's a great human rights lawyer and also county commissioner for Oklahoma County.
Yes, and he filed today to challenge the
petition
the
itself.
petition
What a
803,
patriot.
SQ 803.
As it turns out, the Democrats can't even cite their grievances correctly or
Yeah.
legally.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And you
they
gotta
can't even
love it.
tell you what
Listen.
your law says.
Don Spencer did his homework. He shows up at the Oklahoma City Zoo, and there's a couple of ladies that are doing this, and they're just saying a bunch of stuff that's not true.
Well,
They're just
absolutely
demanding action.
believe it. They
Oh, yeah.
absolutely believed what was written
Yeah.
on the paper.
They might
But-
not be factually
Yeah.
correct,
They-
but perhaps they were morally correct.
I'm sure, yes. And
Well,
I'm
we
sure,
choose truth over facts.
yes. I'm sure these ladies had no idea they were talking to the author of that bill, Don Spencer.
Yes.
And
no, they had no.
It doesn't
clue.
matter if they were demanding action.
Go
And-
to 3D. Go to 3D Politics. Look at the article that David wrote at Sooner
Yeah.
Politics, and you'll see the videos that we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's the best 6 minutes you'll watch. Skip through the first minute. Just Dawn walking up to the ladies.
yeah. Well, and then I've got another video over at the Supreme Court. In fact, Jay Stiegel, another freshman along with Dean Davis, who tied with him for top Freedom Index score. He was there. Nathan Dahm was at Supreme Court today, and there was probably about 30, 40 other people there. Part of it, a couple of Moms Demand Action.
So what
people
happens
showed
if the Democrats succeed in lying that they got 60,000 signatures?
Yeah, well, you can contest them. It costs money though to contest them. But yeah, so here's what happens. Let's talk about this, because a number of us went through this a year ago with Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite. And when it was challenged, did we do things right? Ends up, I think Rhonda said she left page numbers off or something like that.
Yeah, we lost. Not on the challenges of what is being claimed
Merit.
here, that they are misrepresenting the petition itself or the referendum.
Yeah.
We won on those points.
Yes.
What we lost on was the technicality that it was that certain page numbers, page 1 of 64, 2 of 64, that kind of a thing, those were left off.
Yeah.
I thought there was a page size issue.
Isn't it amazing?
Well, no, that
if
was-
the
that was
right
correct,
people
but the-
like you can violate statutes directly with impunity.
Yeah.
If they don't like what you're doing, the smallest technicality
So-
can have your measure thrown out.
Well, and and I don't know if there's
Okay.
recording of it, but it was very obvious that the state Supreme Court did not like Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite
Oh, yeah.
a year ago.
No, it was.
Their questions, they couldn't even keep the cases correct.
Yes.
Because they kept asking questions from the one case while we were in the other case, and the attorneys had to keep referencing them back.
That's all
and
right.
that's the wrong one.
Yeah,
because they
we're
were
going to take their
the
cabal
wrong
away
one.
from them.
It-
They just
it-
get to select
it
each
was-
other among each
yeah,
other.
I watched it at home. It was live webcast. But so here's what happens though. This challenge is to the heart of the matter when you're explaining your grounds and you claim if this passes, our universities and schools, people will be carrying guns. And
of course, they're doing this out at the gathering place where kids are all around. They're selling this to parents who want to look out for
Yeah,
their
you know,
children.
you have to have a
So-
really safe place like Honduras or Detroit or Chicago where guns
okay,
are banned.
Okay, but for the purposes of Don's filing, he had to have it written
It has
there.
to be
Something
correct.
incorrect has to be in the petition. And those ladies, they helped him out. They showed him the petition. They showed him everything. Don got all the exhibits. I mean, they fed him enough rope to hang them with.
Right.
And it's going to be done.
by law, they
Okay.
have to. They have to.
Well,
have
they
those
demanded
things. They have to
action.
show
They
that.
didn't say what action.
Yes, that if you're signing the petition.
Got your way, ladies.
Okay, if you're signing a petition, it includes on the petition the summary, okay?
Correct.
And then it also says if a person who's signing wants to see the full text, you have to give that to them. And so what ended up happening though, even in the summary, there were incorrect facts.
Yes.
And that's usually where you get in trouble. So anyway, if that challenge works, then they've got to start over, okay? The problem is,
Who has to start over?
in 3 days, their deadline's going to be. So I don't even think we're going to have a Supreme Court case in time for.
No, it'll be.
So
it'll just be.
Here's the
thrown
real
out.
question then. Why did these intelligent Democrats, these industrious, hardworking, morally correct people, why did they wait until 10 days to their deadline to start this action?
Well, there were-
what's the end game here? Come on. They don't really intend to get
That's a brilliant point because it's posturing, isn't it?
Well, or it was an issue of timing They needed somebody to rush in from out of state that had the money and the
And what national events happened earlier this month?
Yeah.
Just preceding.
Yeah,
it?
there's a perfect crisis to make hay. Or
Yeah,
to
but
take advantage of.
I want to expand on what
They have plenty of money
what
right here in this
D'Ambroso
state.
said. D'Ambroso, right now is when the money's being raised for next year's elections, right? And this is the kind of thing you do to pander to groups you hope to get money from.
And famous Roman slave Spartacus is actually traveling to Oklahoma
Yes, he
Thursday to fight the empire.
Yeah.
He wants to ensure that only Caesar can have guns.
Yeah.
What a brave and noble warrior.
So my question is he bringing his tyrant in his buckler along with his neck?
So
that's my
That's a
question.
good question.
So anyway, assuming they even got the 60,000 signatures, assuming that at least 60,000 are valid signatures and would withstand a challenge, you still have to say, hey, was this petition presented accurately? And if it wasn't accurate, then it was all for nothing. Except for the voter list that you get when you're taking
Spartacus
rights
gets a
petitions.
photo op.
That's true.
He
You
gets
know
to bring
what?
it up at a debate.
This is a great point, D'Ambroso. On collecting all those signatures, you're collecting a lot of people that you
Leads.
know where their petition, where their position is when it comes to campaign
Donor voter
fundraising.
data.
Yes, voter data. There it is. There it is.
But let's also realize, let's take it another direction and go back to our individual duties. Let's understand that these little old ladies who look to be sweet little old ladies, and every single person signing the petition, what they are in their sweetness is asking government, demanding of government that they put the meanest and the worst among them against we the people to go back and arrest and harm us for exercising our rights. Go back and exercise these political crimes. That's what they want, or enforce these political crimes. And so let's not be deceived by their sweetness. Oh, we're just moms, and we just want.
No, it's just common
Your
sense stuff.
common sense
They want your
done.
5-year-old to be taught about LGBTQRS 1, 2, 3, and to be able to get an abortion on demand without your notification, but they don't want you as an adult to be able to defend yourself. It's just common sense, right?
Right. And they want, if you should have the opportunity or make yourself ready to defend yourself and others, that you are a criminal and need to be treated as the felon
you don't
you
need
really
that.
are.
You don't need that. Why don't you just be a real man and just hit the guy trying to shoot you with the rifle?
Right. Bring your fist to a gunfight.
Just
Should
hit
we
the
go
guy.
on?
So, all right.
Somebody's bored. Hey, you're sticking around for 3D politics. We got just a couple more stories. Let's talk about the candidate who wanted the city to be white as possible, and apparently her white privilege card has run out because she's withdrawing from the council race.
Yeah, what city is this? By the way?
Michigan.
Michigan.
Port Huron,
Tulsa.
Michigan.
Okay.
Port Huron,
Tell us about
Michigan.
that.
Her name is Jean Kramer.
Now she's one of those sweet ladies.
She is. She
is
is
the
just
sweetest.
like the sweet ladies you're going to see in
I
Don
think that's a
Spencer's
wig.
videos.
She's at least as Native American as Elizabeth Warren, so she is standing here.
And the thing that struck me when you look at the videos of her, and you can Google her name, and she's all over the internet for the last
Did
few
we
days.
put it up on 3D politics?
Haven't yet. We'll
Okay.
get it up
We'll get it.
later. But the whole point is that she's a sweet lady, and it came out the other day in a city council race, a public forum where they were all meeting at the city council, and they're all sitting behind the desk, the city councilmen's desks, and they're all sitting up there as candidates and and talking, and apparently the mayor pro tem, a white lady, has a mixed racial daughter or son is in a mixed race marriage, and
Shocking.
she has mixed race
resemble
grandchildren.
that.
Just
And
shocking.
she
Which was illegal.
brought it up, and poor Jean Kramer had a little bit of a problem with it,
Oh.
and talked about how she wanted to keep their city white, and how she thought that it had always been really a white city and should remain such, and she gets confused between race culture and different people with different cultures coming in. Well, and she gets confused because they're different colors at the same time.
It is a confusing issue.
They don't look like her.
But here's the thing that really struck it for me was she wanted to make sure that marriage licenses were used properly and people were kept from marrying outside of their kind.
Legislative.
Is this like the real life blast from the past, like the Brendan Fraser film?
Yeah.
But it's like she's been recast. She's the female version. Like she just like came out of stasis from
I got it.
1961.
Well, but remember that.
She's like, that's still a law, right?
That marriage licenses were started to prevent interracial marriage. That was the purpose of marriage licenses.
One of my favorite history tidbits is when the Nazi high command, they were deciding what their race laws would be. And like, listen, no society in history, no nation has had these strict race laws that we're about to implement, except for in the American South. And they looked at all these laws that the Democrats wrote, and the Nazi high command decided that the Democrats were too racist for them. That they had a one-drop rule. You were considered black. If you had one drop of black, you're 99.9% white. You were a black person, and you don't have the same rights as a white, 1857, 1898, up until, whenever, okay? Because of these democratic laws. The Nazis said, you know what, let's just cut it off at a quarter. Just under a quarter, you're fine. We're not going to put you in a death camp. So Democrats, more racist than Nazis.
I gotta say something here. I just did. You ever hear Ancestry DNA thing?
Right.
All my kids decide, Dad, come on. You tell us all about this heritage. We don't believe you.
You're really Nigerian, right?
Yeah. Well, it's almost that funny because it comes out. Sure
That
enough,
sent me a lot of emails.
I've got Slavic blood in me that I've been denying for the longest time. But my name,
because your Dutch blood hates the Slavs.
my
Internal
People across the channel are just wrong.
I do not like being called Dutch. I'm sorry. I'm Belgian, Flemish Belgian.
You're right.
There's a difference.
Yes, there is.
So I finds out I'm about 40% Belgian, okay, or that tribal, entity, that bloodline.
You got some alleles
So-
in that area.
My daughter is married to nicest guy, Khalil Knox. Nice. He's black. His mother, is from Chicago and stuff. And he doesn't know. My daughter's trying to say, "Come on, tell me about your family lineage and stuff." So she gets him the ancestry
like
DNA. Okay, my daughter, who's less than 20% Belgian, she didn't get the test, but Khalil, she got it for him. His comes back, he's just as much Belgian as she is.
Right.
And he's black. And I don't mean just kind of black, I mean he's black. But he's just as much Belgian as she is.
You got to see if he's tanning.
Yeah, so I'm telling you, my point is, when you just look at somebody's skin to try to decide even what their ethnicity is, that is superficial as a day is long.
That's true. You wouldn't know by looking at me that I'm 100%
Because
Mennonite.
every cell, every gene in his body is just as Belgian as my daughter.
There's
Right.
Belgian chocolate, isn't there? And then I do have a serious
Well,
question.
we're known for our Belgian
Waffles.
studs. We're good horse raisers, and
And you're 43% stud. Nice
that's
job.
right. That's right.
No, but if they say though, in today's world, you're not supposed to call people colored. Colored people. You're not supposed to use that term. You're supposed to say African American or otherwise.
Unless a lefty's using that
Vanilla
term.
is a color.
But they say about women that they are women of color.
Or people
Yeah.
of color.
We are
I
all
can't
shades
figure
of
out.
beige, though.
But I can't. I'm just trying to play by their rules, David.
Yeah, we're all
You
shades of
can't.
beige.
That's the point.
I always thought the irony, from a young age, you learn in art theory, in elementary school even, that white is all of the colors of the spectrum, and black is the total absence of color. And those are supposed to be the colored people, the people
that's
that tend
true.
towards black.
So
Makes
you're
no
saying-
sense, really.
So you're saying, according to science, if you're black, you're not colored.
No, it's a lack of color.
And those
White
who
people
say
are the people of
otherwise
color.
are science deniers. then.
Science deniers.
That's right.
I
Yeah.
tested that theory with my 64 crayons, and if you use all crayons, it's black.
Us people,
It's actually kind of a purplish.
Depends on how many crayons you have left.
us people of African heritage, we almost almost uniformly have very dark hair and dark eyes. I mean, it's a lack of color. And you see white people of European heritage, you've got every color of hair in the spectrum, and you've got multiple eye colors. I mean, really, white people are the colored people.
That really
Can we
hurts,
settle
David.
on this?
That hurts, David. That hurts really.
You guys are just colored.
I don't
Get
care.
used to.
I want to know when the day is we can quit even acknowledging it.
As soon as it's no longer politically expedient, and you'll be
And
long
that's
dead.
the point. That's a point. The race baiters can't let it go because they've made a name and a fortune for themselves.
Well, but let's go
Alex,
back.
you're gonna rile
let's
up the
take
low
this
information
back
voters.
again.
That's right.
Let's take this back again. It works because people individually glom onto this stuff,
That's
and
it.
they are racist individually. So it works. If
I
it's
would
working
counter
on
that.
you, then check yourself.
Why does anyone even care? I mean, I'm going to say something
I counter
controversial, but in a free society,
We
who
got a
cares if
rebuttal
someone's
here.
racist?
Yeah.
Oh, exactly.
Their
Well, that's
choice.
true. That's
Who
true.
cares?
Well, actually, I should say
let's
two.
talk
Like,
about
in
this.
diamonds, there's natural cleave lines that don't mean anything about the characteristic of the diamond. There's a natural cleave line in a diamond. Where they cut the diamond, they look for that natural cleave line.
true.
Okay,
Sure.
we have natural cleave lines without being racist. We naturally tend towards, if I'm on Mars and I run into an Earthling, I'm like, hey, Earthling! And we typically go towards those things that are familiar to us, even in name recognition when it comes to voting. A familiar name, you don't have to know anything, they'll vote for that more often. So the attack of those who want to control, they attack upon natural cleave lines. They get us on race and gender and economics, anything that's easy like that, where there's natural
What's
lines.
different?
Good point.
They're the
It's
people
different.
literally
It's not
leveraging
racist.
the differences against society, typically.
Yes.
But Tom, I'm going to say this on a very human biological
You're racist.
No, fact is, I won't even get human
Okay,
on it.
all
I'll
right.
get animalistic on it. Okay, my grandpa's farm,
Stud-like.
he had an Angus bull and a bunch of Holsteins and Jerseys and Guernsey. And that Angus bull, he didn't care whether they were Guernsey or Jersey or whether they were Angus or not. They were all his, and he's one of them. So I'm telling you, I don't know where your cleave lines go with that analogy, but,
I'm totally lost on
I'm
this
seeing
stud
it.
conversation.
I'm just
It takes a stud to recognize
Because
stud
the
talk.
bull was being paid to have sex. That's why.
You didn't have to pay him nothing. The sex
Bull was
was
getting
paid.
paid.
How come it's when a bull does it, it's a stud fee, but
Yeah.
otherwise, if a woman charges, she's a whore.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Well,
Licensure, am I right, Oldham? Am I right?
So, but anyways, I'm just saying, if we try to split up humanity into subsets as though they're different species, because that's what the woman in Michigan's trying to do. Now, I understand when you put a donkey with a horse, you get a mule, and
Yeah,
that
sterile.
mule is neutered, right? But nature itself tells us there is nothing in nature that keeps any human from any other human.
Exactly.
Now, I'm gonna
Except
s-
for physical
now,
barriers.
I'm going to say this. And, okay,
Technology.
This is my shock jock
Oceans.
in me. I'm going to say this. My kids asked me, he said, because I'm trying to teach them the Bible, I'm trying to teach them morality and stuff, and they said, Dad, is mixed nationality marriage, mixed racial marriage, is it wrong? And I said, yes, it is wrong. I said, the scriptures call us as Christians a set-aside people, a holy nation, a peculiar people. For a Christian to marry a non-Christian would be a mixed marriage. And I said, if you are a believer, you are commanded in your faith, your creed, to marry your like kind, another Christian. So,
That is
there.
a good theological.
Now that you've taken your jaw off the ground,
Well,
Dave,
David Stern, you've taken us from race to a belief system, which is,
I am, but
you're not born into a
Well,
belief
you know
system.
what's
necessarily.
interesting is that we got there, but this Gene Kramer brought up the Bible. She thinks that the Bible teaches that you're not to marry outside of your racial kind.
Yeah.
And she said Adam and Eve were the same. She forgot about Moses and the Ethiopian and others and Solomon and his wives from around
that
the
took
world.
him away
Yeah.
from God.
But
Yes.
yeah.
He was monogamous with every one of those wives.
But my point
He was
is,
actually. That's another concept for another
Okay.
day.
Oh,
but
God,
my
please
point
don't.
is, when we're discrediting Mrs. Kramer here, we also have to understand that there are people who have deeply held convictions that are not hate-based. They're not ignorance-based. They are faith-based.
Sure.
You know, and they have every right to practice their faith as it pertains to their life.
And as so long as that they are not violating the rights of others
Yeah.
in the practice of it.
The
Directly.
just laws are deprived from the government's duty to protect us from the injuries of others. That's
Yes.
Jefferson, right?
Yeah.
Well, and it's an amazing thing because it's so disingenuous. Like most of the things the left does, they're just for political power. Pushing this whole diversity thing. Well, biodiversity is a thing that naturally exists in equilibrium. You know, we don't need the left, just like we don't need people curating the Amazon. It's going to get along with or without you.
Or
We
our
don't need people
national
curating diversity.
Right.
You know, it's up to you in your own prerogative whether you want to have mixed race society or not, or mixed race company or not. I mean, that's totally up to the individual, and it's ridiculous, I think, for people to really try to curate that and play I guess farm master or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I've got
I think I saw that movie.
my youngest brother is openly homosexual, and he married another man according to what they call Minnesota marriage. It's a covenant. I did not honor it as a marriage from my faith perspective because my faith informs me what marriage is as a sacrament. But I do honor it as a covenant. Now, why do I do that? Because if you look in the Bible, Jonathan and David were two very close people who entered into a covenant. No, I'm not saying they were gay.
Yeah, no.
But they had a right. Yeah, they both had wives, right?
No way.
Cover.
But
Like
they,
that gets you out of it.
but here's the thing: we're talking human rights here. A human has an opportunity and a right to enter into whatever covenants they want.
Of course.
Okay, and that's between them.
Sure.
Just as now, after Jonathan died, it was many years later. David, all of a sudden, it was brought to his attention. Jonathan had a descendant named Mephibosheth, and
Took care of that person.
Mephibosheth, he had him come live in the palace and eat with him. And everything. He still honored that covenant to the generations that followed.
Right.
So that tells me I have to honor covenants just as a right of man. Okay?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I have to honor it as a sacrament. And that's why I believe we should get government out of the
Marriage,
out of the
church
whole
business.
thing. To call them covenants, whatever you want, because covenant's already a legal term.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
and just give that
Yeah.
term marriage back to the churches and the faiths and the synagogues.
Marriage
and the-
predates government
Yeah,
and
yeah.
is a religious issue.
Another
not a
plug.
government issue.
Todd Russ, the Marriage Freedom Bill, next session, legislature, pass that thing out of committee. Yeah, that restores it. It makes it to where a couple can just go file their marriage with their affidavit at the court clerk's office. You don't even need an officiant for it. It's a right of man.
We all fall short of the glory of God. If homosexuality is a sin, so is gluttony, so is
Yeah.
adultery, so is
Sure.
lying. Everybody falls somewhere on the spectrum of imperfection.
Yeah.
And so we don't want to disallow other sinners from going to church or enjoying their freedom simply because they're also a
But
sinner.
you know what? It's so much funner to judge you than to judge myself.
So much easier to judge me.
Something about specs and poles.
I know.
Is this also racial?
Well, I want to judge your actions, but I want to judge my intentions. You know?
That sounds only fair.
So, anyway.
Anything else to close out, guys? What else you got? Anything?
No.
I think that's it. I'm Tom
What do we got
McKay.
coming up? Labor Day? Is
Labor
it
Day
time
weekend.
to honor what work has done for our society?
Tommy.
Thank your parents for teaching you a good work ethic. Teach your kids the good work ethic. Be safe this weekend.
Thank you, comrade.
Tom McKay here with all three Davids. David Van, David Oldham, David D'Ambroso. We'll see you again next week.